Welcome back, or welcome to Ms. Gillum's tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at finding the area of a triangle. I will be starting with the basics of discovering the area of a triangle formula, but we'll go through that pretty quick, so feel free to fast forward if you just need to see example problems. So I found this cute joke. It is not my own. I don't remember the website, but I will link it down at the bottom so that I'm giving credit where it belongs, but I thought it was funny. It says, why is the obtuse triangle always upset? Because it is never right, because an obtuse triangle can never have a right angle. So I thought it was funny, a little math humor to start our day. So, well, let's go ahead and get started with the actual lesson. Okay, before we get started talking about area of a triangle, we need to take a step back and make sure we really understand what the area of a rectangle is and what are we actually finding. So, as many of you say, you're finding the inside or the space that the shape takes up on the inside. So we know that the formula is area equals length times the width. And I'm going to go ahead and put the X, but you guys know I don't like the X, so just for my fourth graders, I'll write the X this time. So area equals length times width. But another name for length and width that you will see is this. It can also be called the base. This bottom is the base of the rectangle. And then you can also have this be known as the height instead of just length and width. And honestly, I wish they would just call them the base and the height because it'll make solving for several formulas a lot easier. So this also could be formula is area equals base times height. And so it doesn't matter about which formula you use because you're still going to be doing A equals 5 times 8. So that means the area equals 40 inches squared. Do not forget the squared. Don't even forget your inches. Like I said, say to all my students, label, label, label. So important, especially as you get older. The labels will be used for other things, and so you need to make sure you have the correct label. Okay, now let's move on to triangles. Now that we know other terms that we could use for the area of a rectangle is base times height, we're going to take that understanding to figure out what the formula for the area of a triangle is. But first, what I need you to do is pause the video, and I want you to think about if I asked you to make a triangle out of this rectangle, what would you do? Well, if you're back from pausing your video, hopefully you could thought of two different ways that you could cut this rectangle. You could cut it through the diagonal, a little better than my straight line, to make a triangle. So now you have two triangles. Well, every rectangle creates two triangles. So if we think about that, the area of a rectangle is area equals base times the height. But if we only want to know one of the triangles, we could half that. So we could say that the area of a triangle, I'm just going to draw a triangle, is the base times the height divided by 2. Or you may also see the formula as the area of a triangle of base times height times a half. Because if you multiply by half, it's the same thing as dividing by 2. If you're in my 4th grade class watching this, I want you to focus on this one. Because we know how to divide by 2. We're not going to worry about multiplying by half right now. So, but just know that multiplying by half and dividing by 2 are the same thing. So, if we look at this problem, on the area for the rectangle, we had 5 times 8, and we said that was 40 inches squared. So, but on this one, we're going to do 5 times 8, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So we would say this is 40, and this is why hopefully you did the order of operations before completing this. And then 40 divided by 2 is 20, so this is 20 inches squared. And notice it's still squared. anytime you are finding area, your label should be squared. I get on to my students all the time for not labeling, and you will hear me continue to repeat this throughout the video. So let's move on. So once again, the area formula for a triangle is the base. So I'm going to write this. The base times the height divided by 2. And if you want to write it as base times height divided by 2, this way it is completely fine. And also know that as you get older, it's also going to be a half times the base times the height. So if you're already in those older grades, you're probably seeing this formula. But remember, a half means the same thing as dividing by 2. So another thing I put in my students' notes that I wanted to go over just to make sure they understand, height. I always tell my students, think about getting measured at the doctor's office. When you are getting measured at a doctor's office, they expect you to stand straight up, and that is your height. So the height always has to be a vertical line. It cannot be slanted. So in a right triangle, those are easy. The height is going to be your vertical line. This is not the height. It is slanted. When you have a triangle where there are 2 slanted sides, the height would have to be drawn from the base to the highest vertex and make a 90-degree angle. I want you to notice that 90-degree angle for all of your heights because that tells us it's a vertical line. And then if you have an obtuse triangle similar to this one where it's slanted and slanted again, then once this time you cannot get to the highest vertex on the inside, so they write the height on the outside. So you can see the height in 3 different places in triangles. Now we're going to do a few example problems. I have taken these problems from the Super Teacher website and really appreciate all the practice. This one is one of the free ones that I'm using that you can easily go get from their website. But to find, once again, I tell my students write the formula, area equals base times height divided by 2. So then I want you to go through and label, okay, this is my base, this is my height, and now I can work the problem out. So I have 8 times 6, divide that by 2. Well, we know that 8 times 6 is 48, and then divide that by 2, so the area equals 24 meters squared. Next, we're looking at Isosceles Triangle and finding the area of this one. And the reason it's isosceles is because we know at least 2 of the sides are equivalent, the 20 centimeters and 20 centimeters. So once again, I'm going to write that formula because the more you write this formula, the more it'll stick in your memory. So area equals base times height divided by 2. So we're going to do the area equals 20 times 20. We're going to divide that by 2. And 20 times 20 we know is 400 divided by 2. And the area equals 200 centimeters squared. Remember, label, label, label. This time in this triangle, you can see the height is on the outside, but this is still our height. This is our base, it's the bottom of the triangle, and this is our height. So once again, our area equals base times height divided by 2. And I tell my students, you can stop doing that when you get 10 correct in a row without any corrections. You can stop writing the area formula. So then we have area equals 10 times 17 divided by 2. And so then we have the area equals 170 divided by 2. So then you might have to, if you're in my 4th grade class, come over and do your partial division. Divide this by 2. You're probably thinking 2 times 80. That gives 160 with 10 left, and then 2 times 5. And that gives us exactly 10. So 85. So if I divided this, this would be 85 centimeters squared. Okay, this is our last example problem. I'd love for you to pause the video, try this on your own, and then check your work with my answer. Okay, so hopefully you're back from pausing the video. So once again, base times height divided by 2. So if my base is 16, my height is 9, and eventually you're going to get problems where you're going to see several numbers, and you're just going to have to remember that vertical line is your height. So then 16 times 9, so if you were in my 4th grade class, 6 times 9 we know is 54, then 9 times 10 is 90. You add that, you get 144. So then we have A equals 144 divided by 2. And we can go ahead and divide this. 2 going into, think about like 140 is going to give us 70. So that would be 140. I have 4 left, and that's 2 times 2. And some of you might have seen that. You could have been like, well, 2 goes into 14 7 times, 2 goes into, and you might have been able to do that in your head if you are in my 4th grade class. So it's 72 kilometers squared. Great job today, everyone. I hope this video helped. If you're in my class, if you flip to the back, there are a few practice problems for you to try, and then turn it in and I will check it and let you know how you did. If you are not in my class, thank you for watching. I hope it helped you have a better understanding of how to find the area of triangles.